With the recent free fly event giving access to a large number of ships, you may have noticed that some, such as this Gladius here, sport a somewhat different HUD. This is an example of the new building blocks based UI, slowly making its way to all ships. I'll be going through the entirety of this new HUD, as well as what each of the abbreviations means and how they affect your ship, to get you into the game fully prepared. I won't be covering ships' MFDs in this video, but for the sake of completeness, I will briefly go over the old school HUD that most ships currently have in the second half of this video. And with that out of the way, roll the intro.
Aegis combat assist activated. Systems.
I'll never get tired of watching that. It's like that pinch of salt on your chips. You don't need it, but please, CIG, can you add this to every ship?
Aegis combat.
So, I'm going to start from the middle, and work my way around counterclockwise. In the centre is your targeting reticule. This is where your weapons are pointed at any given time, so try to make sure you keep the enemy ships under that cross. When you start moving, you'll notice this square icon appears with an arrow inside the border. This is your direction of movement indicator, with a down arrow indicating you're moving backwards, and an up arrow indicating you're moving forwards. Moving to the left then, we have the speed cluster. On the right of this cluster is the max speed indicator, which you can set via the mouse wheel. This is delimited into progressively smaller chunks, each representing roughly 10% of your ship's top speed, except the top chunk, which is 30%. The larger size of the bottom chunks means that you get much more granularity at lower speeds, which is great for low speed manoeuvring. You'll notice there's also a red mark on this bar, which is your SCM or Space Combat Maneuver Speed. As the name suggests, you want to keep your speed at or below this value during combat. Currently there's no adverse effects for failing to do so, beyond making aiming a bit more of a challenge, but in future patches there may be detriments to going above this SAM speed, such as your missiles not being able to fire. In the middle, we have your relative speed, which is indicated in meters per second. Then finally on the left, we have the thrust, although in the past it was called acceleration. This is controlled by holding Alt-GR and scrolling the mouse wheel, and controls the amount of power your engines put out. Think of it as like how far you push the accelerator in your car or turn the throttle on a bike. As you can see, lower thrust means lower acceleration. Personally, I just leave this on max as I use joysticks, but it can be useful for keyboard and mouse users as they don't have that analog movement. Finally, we have the AFB, or afterburner indicator, which comes on when the afterburner is triggered by holding shift. Just think of it as a speed boost. Moving down then, we have the G-force cluster. On the left is the force direction indicator. If I move left, you see the dot gets thrown to the right. If I go up, it's thrown down, etc. There's no indication for backwards and forwards movement though. The number to the right shows the number of Gs being exerted. Finally, we have the G-safe marker. When this is active, the ship will never exceed more than 10 G of force, preventing you from experiencing a blackout or redout. As you can see, there were no adverse effects to doing a flip at high speed. However, if I disable G-save and perform the same manoeuvre, the ship was able to rotate much faster, but in doing so, pulled a pretty impressive 20 G, causing me to black out. By default, G-safe isn't bound to any key, but you can bind it to one within the game's settings. Additionally, by default, if you hit the afterburner, that disables G-save, but this can be disabled too. Moving a little to the right, we have this cluster here, which has 3 icons on this ship, though I suspect a 4th may be added for VTOL ships, just to identify their thruster position. At the top, we have the landing gear indicator. It's empty when the gear's up, and solid when the gear's down. Below that, we have the CPLD, or coupled
Landing
mode.
gear retracted.
When coupled mode is enabled, it causes your ship to behave in space much like it would in an atmosphere. Namely, your ship will try and keep the direction of travel in front of the nose by automatically applying thrust. Additionally, your ship will automatically come to a stop unless you engage cruise control with C. Decoupled then, causes your ship to follow the laws of physics, wherein the ship will continue to drift in the direction that thrust was last applied, regardless of where the nose is pointed. Essentially, it decouples the direction of travel from the orientation of your ship and gives you full control. This is toggled with the V key. Now it should be noted that coupled mode is a personal preference for everyone. I tend to fly with it enabled during general flight, but then disable both it and G-Safe during combat. I'd recommend you try both, but coupled is generally easier to get used to. Finally, there is ESP, or Enhanced Stick Precision. In a nutshell, it's like aim assist. It reduces the sensitivity curve of your movement inputs when the ship's reticle is over your targeted ship. This can't be set to a keybind, but it can be disabled within the menu. Try with and without, it's personal preference. Moving right again, we have the gimbal cluster, which indicates the gimbal mode your weapons are set to, cycled with the R key. If you have fixed weapons, this is irrelevant. If you do have gimbaled weapons, however, which is currently recommended, then you have three options. Locked mode will cause the weapons to remain in a locked forward position, like fixed weapons, firing only where you aim your ship. Target will cause the weapons to follow the mouse cursor, allowing you to aim your weapons with some independence of ship movement. Finally, there's auto gimbal, which will show these two circles of dashes on the screen. Upon aiming at a ship, these two circles will converge, at which point your weapons will automatically aim at the target. In order for this to work, however, you need to keep them near the centre of the circle, so do keep that in mind. Target mode with gimbaled weapons is easily the best for mouse users, and is typically much more effective than fixed weapons. HOTAS and HOSAS users can use it, but they may find that the auto gimbal mode is better for them. Finally then, we have the fuel cluster. This is nice and simple, with the top value being the amount of quantum fuel remaining, which is used for quantum travel, and hydrogen fuel, which is used for general movement such as within atmosphere or during combat. Both of these are percentage values of the tank. And that's it. Now then, onto the old school HUD. It always feels right to sit with the controls of this old girl after flying another ship.
Systems green.
The old school HUD then. It's very much like the new one, but with a few differences. Starting again from the middle, you have the same reticle and movement icons as on the new HUD. Surrounding the centre, we have the speed cluster, and this is the first major difference. On the left is the max speed setting, however this is delimited into even sections, meaning you retain the same granularity at all speeds. The relative velocity in meters per second can be found halfway up this bar. On the right hand side is the thrust level, which is instead shown as a simple bar. Moving to the bottom left, you have your hydrogen fuel quantity. There's no indication of your quantum fuel here, so the easiest way to view this is to simply open the Skyline app by hitting F2. Next is the countermeasures that you have selected, as well as the number remaining. This is something that's missing from the new UI, which I feel they need to add. These can be cycled by hitting the H key, and consist of flares for infrared missiles, and chaff for electromagnetic missiles. Cross-section missiles don't have a countermeasure, outside of your flying skill or your turret gunner's ability to channel their inner Luke Skywalker. Good luck. Next along the bottom is the G-force meter. This is nice and simple, showing a total G-force being experienced currently. However, it doesn't indicate the direction that force is being applied. Next along the bottom is this icon here, which is your G-safe indicator. If it's disabled, the icon will disappear. Disabling coupled mode will bring up this icon here, which looks like a broken chain link. And finally, we have the landing gear icon here, which is shown as a down arrow. And that covers everything. If you have any questions or if there's anything within Star Citizen you want us to cover, leave it in the comments below. And with that, thanks for watching, we'll catch you all next time.